Hi, everyone. Hi, Mike. How's it going?
Hey, Aline, good to see you. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you. As you can see, I have boxes around me because I just moved to the countryside, so excited about that. But other than that, very good. How about yourself?
Life is very good. Juniper's doing well, especially in the higher education market. And I just love talking to our customers and clients about what we're doing in higher education. Just had three in the last 2 days where we talked to folks. So it's been certainly a good topic to talk about what we're talking about today. It's always around user experience.
That is fantastic. So yeah, on tooling and controlling and user experience. Mike, let's take a few steps back then. What can you tell me about user experience itself? What are we judging here for user experience?
Yeah, and it's a basic question of meaning. Are you happy? And a lot of it has to do with where you put your time to focus on keeping someone happy, right? So when I look at it, the network obviously plays a part. Does it keep the network? Does it keep a person happy? There's a lot of things that affect that. And my best analogy is thinking about when you talk about user experiences. Think about when you've gone to a restaurant last, right? I mean, I'm sure you've been to several good restaurants out there by the country, and the first thing that I do when I go look for a restaurant, I start checking out. If it's brand new, I'll look at the Yelp reviews, right? And to say, hey, is this good? Is it bad? Do I like it? And the key thing about that is that you'll realize that every user will have a different way of doing a metric to decide whether that person or that restaurant is good, right? I may have given it 5 stars because it met my needs and I loved the food. And, yeah, the service was a little iffy, but some might have given it 1 star because their drink came back with not enough ice in it, right? So it's interesting when you talk about user experience as a whole, it is about what that user values. And so when we're talking in higher education, especially, you talk about the user community, usually are the group of students and faculty and the folks in administration that use the network, and what they value can be very different from person to person, right? And so you need to make sure that as you focus on user experience, you have to understand what is it that affects the overall experience, so that you can get to the point of saying this is a good experience for me as an individual that's unique.
That's fair. To your point, for restaurants here, you have to do a quick check-in. They have a QR code at the front. So I always tell them, if you want me to do an online check-in, at least provide me a good Wi-Fi that I can use and take pretty pictures of my food and post them while I'm there.
Yeah, when you look at the networking side, Aline, it's interesting because there's a lot of things that can go wrong on a network that can affect a user's experience. So for example, take the poor student that is out there on the campus, and maybe for them, it's the most important thing to be able to run Netflix on their phone over the Wi-Fi network because they're trying to save money on their data plan, and so they're not able to do something. But probably more deeply than that, it's like, okay, I'm going to download a file. If that's slow and I can't get my work done, that affects my satisfaction as a user. If I'm looking at it, just being able to get connected to the network, the password part, just getting past that first piece where for some reason I'm just not getting on the network. That ticks you off, especially if you think you're typing everything correctly and it's not letting you on the network. That's a problem, right? Having access to the applications on campus that you may need to be able to use are all part of that as well. So, those are things that really, when you look at it and the people that use the network, their satisfaction is based on being able to have something that's a platform that can allow you to solve problems very quickly, identify them, and hopefully solve them before the user has to go and say, yeah, let me have a trouble ticket.
That's awesome, Mike. So one thing I wanted to say, it's a big shout out for the people joining the call. I saw a hello there. Hi back. If you have any questions or if you have what is user experience for you, please post on the chat and we'll be happy to attend to it. Mike, I think it's easy for us to say, well, my network is not working, right? But we don't know what's happening on the back end. So can you talk a little bit about the architecture and the network, the complexities that we don't see in the back end?
Absolutely. So you look at what Juniper is doing that is really remarkable. I mean, it's the reason why we went from the lower left-hand side of the quadrant in the Gartner group ratings all the way to the #1 level to execute, right? So we're in the top spot. And the reason why that happened, and if you're familiar with Gartner, it's because, in general, people don't move more than like a centimeter in any quadrant, but we've gone from the lower left to the upper right as the #1 solution. And the reason why that happened was because of MIST and the focus they had on user experience first. It's the #1 thing. They wanted to really focus on that. And they also looked at it from an architecture standpoint. And so to your question, you look at how networks were architected in the previous generation and still are architected today to a great extent. You have people that purchase controllers. That's what they do. They have their access points connected to controllers. And usually that's all centralized in a data center somewhere. And then you have those controllers connected to a master controller. All of this equipment and management and the ability to manage them all in this one place is asking for trouble in a lot of cases. As one of our universities just told me, they said that had switched to Juniper's MIST solution. They said that they realized that the controller architecture was a central point of failure, because when the controller went out and you've got this controller sitting there and it goes out, it takes out the whole campus. You're having a really bad day that time. Whereas if something was to happen, like you just lost your routed internet connection to the network, our equipment still continues to work with all the services on campus. It's not like you shut down the campus like you do in the other one. So that alone, from a user experience, if you've ever been in a situation where you're trying to like I have, give a test and then the network goes down and suddenly you have no Blackboard access in the class, trust me, it's a bad day. And suddenly people are yelling at the university about what's going on. The IT people are all running around trying to figure out what's the problem. The other thing that I will tell you about architecture, because of the fact that we're built in the cloud, this makes it so easy to be able to bring people online and get them access to the better experience right away. For example, we have one university that put in 2,000 access points in 48 hours, and they've never looked back. They loved it in 48 hours. And they could have done it in 24, by the way.
That's crazy.
They had students that just went around and unhooked them from the Cisco bracket, put ours in, and because we're not controller based, everything just went to the cloud, and everything was executed immediately. So that experience allows you to simplify the operation of what's going on in the network. And then in the controller world, you've got a lot of work to configure the controllers and figure out how it's interacting with the switches, and there's a lot of work there. That especially in our times now where operations are expensive and we don't have a lot of extra money to spend on that. You want to be able to get to the conclusion of what the problem is very quickly. And there's a lot of ways we can do that.
Is it fair to say that, so we're looking at the student point of view there, but the teacher now it's a very strong user as well, right? We are talking more and more about a hybrid learning process. So basically, we need to make sure that the teachers, professors, the staff of the university also have a great user experience.
Absolutely. So we've had this situation happen when, let's just say, and I've done this, I'm an adjunct professor, right? I've been that for 40 years. When I look, and if I had a bad Zoom experience, where the students are like disconnected or they can't see me, they can't hear me, it really truly causes an issue. And even if it's on campus. And so when you look at what could happen, when I have a bad Zoom experience, it could be the wired network. It could be the Wi-Fi network. It could be the wide area network. It could be the server. It could be the cloud. It could be the client device. But who gets yelled at? Wi-Fi stinks. They look at you and say, Wi-Fi stink. Your Wi-Fi stinks because I'm on and all I see is this little dot. So there's this thing called mean time to innocence, of being able to say, let me tell you exactly what the problem is. And if something takes you days or hours to go find out, then that's not an efficient way to go about doing trouble. In fact, let me say for a second here, when we talk about trouble, and again, when I say trouble, I'm talking about the experience of the user that's on the campus trying to figure out what's going on and getting connected to the network, right? So typically what happens is this poor user, student maybe, is sitting here, they're trying to access an application on campus, they get the blue circle of death just going around and around and around, they don't know what's going on. and a lot of things can be happening in the back end. I mentioned 5 things that it could be, but you're sitting there and looking at that. In the controller world and the architectures that everybody else has put in, this trouble ticket for just this one person becomes so onerous. I mean, think about her or his satisfaction when it comes to, I've done this, I've got a problem, and now they drag you into the process. Okay, can you meet me at noon? Let's try to bring up that application again. Let me go out and look at the access point that's up in the ceiling. Is the color green? Where were you? What were you doing? Let me go check the wiring. And this could take weeks. Trust me. And I just went through this with a carrier with my cell phone for 5 days. They kept dragging me back to solve their issue, which was actually a big issue between the 2 carriers. But they drugged me back in. My satisfaction was very low. And just because of, and the same thing can be said, a student that gets drugged into the trouble ticketing solving process is going to have tremendously reduced reduced satisfaction. And so to be able to sit back and have an artificial intelligence engine identify before that person, let's say the person's got the blue circle of death because of a client server situation, the server for doling out IP addresses or whatever is not working correctly, right? Well, in our world, the artificial intelligence engine knows about it. You can ask in a conversational manner, how's my network? Who are my unhappy users? It'll immediately tell you that this person's done this because they're something about DHCP isn't working. They were on a VLAN that didn't exist on a switch. To be able to have the intelligence engine to tell you this makes a huge amount of difference. And that's why companies like ServiceNow that used to have like 100 trouble tickets a month are down to 2 and going to 0. That's why Dartmouth now front ends their help desk with students in a lot of cases, because they can just run the conversational interface and say, hey, how's my network doing today? And they were able to immediately know. And they say, oh, if this message comes up, that means it's a bad cable. Just copy this and do a dispatch to somebody to replace the cable. What that means is you don't drag the user through all that troubleshooting. You save, and the experience of the people that have to deliver the network is better, right? Because they don't have to spend so much time looking for ghosts and things like that. So I hope that, does that help explain some of that?
That absolutely does. And a big shout out to the IT folks there on the phone trying to solve problems. Definitely look into Marvis to help you solve the problem. It's our way of Juniper to give an extra set of hands there. So Mike, you covered a lot of Wi-Fi there, and especially at user experience from the student being connected to an application. But is there other ways that the network can impact the user experience, let's say from keeping a campus more safe or more interactive?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that people hate more than anything else, like whether you're an employee at a university and they're working from home, is, you're on your own network and you have to run a VPN. And I don't know about you, but every time I've run a VPN on any of my stuff, my 1 gig connection becomes like 10 megabits. It just drops off the table because the VPN server is just not very good, right, in terms of how it optimizes bandwidth. And so to be able to extend a customer's university network to home, and I'm going to talk Wi-Fi again just for a second, but we'll talk about some of the other pieces that are important. But to be able to extend a Wi-Fi network to someone's home, to be able to allow someone to say, you know what, you had that bad Zoom session, Professor Mike, and the problem was that your DHCP server from your home router was overloaded, too many requests. And the problem of that request was all because everybody in your house was running Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Netflix, all at the same time, taking up all your bandwidth. And so you couldn't get your quality of service. Whereas if you had a missed access point at home, now you can, number one, eliminate the VPN if you want to. You can go in and actually extend the university ID to home. So now in a hybrid learning environment where you're teaching students, you have a better way of being able to identify, what's going on and whether you should be teaching from home based on your home network environment, right? And so there's that. But there's also about the architecture as a whole. And this is where Juniper absolutely shines when it comes to this. So think about that Marvis engine that is able to go through and tell you all the stuff that's going on in Wi-Fi. Well, we do that in the switching world as well. And we do that in the security part of our portfolio as well, whether you're using our SRX, for example, on the campus, or our MLXs to do from the routing perspective. The idea is that we have security built in. Why does that matter? Why is it that, does it matter that you can also have your networking, just the overall architecture be taking care of itself? It helps that user experience, because what's the worst thing that can happen on campus? You have a DDoS situation, right? And to be able to capture that immediately on campus through the network without having to go through devices, extra devices, is a big important thing. To be able to use our security as being endemic in everything that we do, and to be able to see within Marvis, here's what's going on and how I can architect that, makes a big difference as well. So there's that piece. The other thing is, as you send out and create new things, new switches, new routers, the idea here is to not have to be stuck with what I call the command line world. And I've grown up with the command line, right? I mean, from the Cisco days, everything is there. It's interesting, we've built ours to not be command line driven. We use, we use it in such a way to be able to say we can build an interface to it, right? We use APIs that allow us to look like the command line, but everything is a plugin. And because of all that plugin and the ability to do it in the cloud as well, you're able to architect and automate an entire network. And so if you're trying to provide the best quality experience for people that have to utilize the database part of your network, the data center, for example, to be able to use something that is intent-based, like our Apstra solution, where before you have to say, okay, this is going to go here, here's my overlay, here's how I connect them all up. Very confusing, very complicated, and one little mistake takes things down, right? As opposed to say, I intend for this to happen. I'm using EVPN VXLAN. I intend for this to work like this, and you use the big animal pictures to be able to create that so that they can roll it out more quickly. This goes to, again, to user satisfaction, because they're able to get access to their users more quickly. The users have every time there's an upgrade or an update or something that takes place, you can have a lot more confidence that that update you just didn't cause you a lot of pain and anguish in the network itself, right?
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is have an update that didn't go well and then have the users piling up on the request for things not working. That's incredible, Mike. But then again, we're looking from a very technical perspective, and then there is the factor of the student around the campus having a full campus experience, right? Having that university being a more welcoming environment. Just if you have a stable Wi-Fi, then it's easier for me to find my class. It's easier for me to find my teacher. I think I've said this in the past. I don't know if that's too positive for the teacher now, because we can find him so easily around the campus. But even now that we're getting out of, or we're improving in regards to the COVID situation, right? How can this improve the user experience, as in updating the campus itself to be ready for the students to come in?
Yeah, so this is why it's important to make sure, especially in the front end where Wi-Fi is important, that the platform you choose has a microservices architecture that's in the cloud. And you can infinitely expand it to do whatever you want. So, for example, in our platform, we can, because we do such incredible things with being able to understand the location of a person down to 1 to 3 meters, right? In fact, I will know where you are on campus, your device. I will know within 1 to 3 meters, and 150 data points pre and post are going up to the cloud all the time. So that helps me on the services side. But let's talk about you as a student on the campus, right? To be able to have, like one of the universities in Texas do, to help the students become more acclimated to the campus, they give them the automated guided tour. It uses the entire Wi-Fi indoor and outdoor network that is all Juniper Mist, and they're able to have blue dot navigation throughout the campus. Right. And to be able to find it, that helps. But also think about this. We have people that provide applications to the universities that now leverage our platform. And one might be student wellness. If you've been in education at all as an educator, you'll realize that probably within the first 90 days of any freshman coming in for the first time is the critical point of whether they're going to engage on campus or they're going to fail out and just stop coming and whatever. And so that's a problem. And from a university perspective, because you want to keep those students in the game from freshman to to when they graduate as a senior and go on to graduate. So to be able to have something that provides applications that allow me to look at everybody that's on campus and understand these folks, these students are not showing up. These students aren't going to their classes. These students haven't been going to the tutoring sessions they should. And to be able to have that so that the university can reach out and help those people is an important factor. But you can't do that without having the data, right? To be able to say, in my library, who's coming to my library and using it, what do I need my students to have access to, just by understanding their traffic patterns in the library is there. So, these applications that we talk about are important for being able to provide this additional information. And that's applications that are not like in the world of the controllers, where if you want to do a beacon, just a beacon, you got to buy a battery operated thing. If you want to do network management, you got to buy a CAPE sensor. You got to buy all this tag on stuff that makes it so complex that you can't even upgrade that architecture for the most part. And in our case, everything's in the cloud. You turn it on, turn it off. It allows you to be able to track all that data. It's stored in the cloud, so you don't even have to have a huge database at home to be able to do it. You get what you need for up to 30 days or more if you like in the cloud itself. So that application architecture gives you things like wayfinding, contact tracing. You mentioned that, and we just came out of the COVID world, but yet now we're re-entering now, and there's a lot of people on hybrid, but we're re-entering because Delta variant is now becoming worse, right? It's now starting to make people think, okay, we have to pull back, back to controls. And this is where having the right platform in place really saves that customer, that university experience for the student, because where if someone were to show up and be identified as a COVID positive person, a lot of times that we've had in the past, they would immediately shut down the campus to say, hey, we can't do this, we got to do this. What you do now with our platform is you're able to identify this person that has been identified as COVID, to be able to go back 30 days and look where they were on campus, to understand where they dwelled, who they dwelled next to, right? So that you can inform those people, hey, you've been exposed to COVID. And so to be able to take the proper quarantining methods and things like that. So,
Absolutely.
So that's protection for the student. And there's lots of other things that go along with that too. Even physical security on campus, to be able to know if a co-ed, for example, is trying to go someplace and feels unsafe at a point, and they call campus security. The campus security knows where they are, and if they're not safe, usually they'll escape somewhere. But you can see where they're going as opposed to who else is out there, even the unconnected clients, so that campus security can keep that student much more safe.
No, that's incredible, Mike. Thank you. And we are at the bottom of the hour there. But I think the most important thing that you've been saying is having the right technology, right? The ability to make sure that you are embracing innovation, to make sure that you can continue being successful, which leads me to say that the next session, September 1st, with Jamie and Kia, is going to be all about fit for the future, choosing the right technologies. And another note that I wanted to say, Mike, is Juniper will be joining EduCause in October. So if folks want to meet us, hopefully in person, if things get better, Mike will continue to be the teacher there, and you can have that conversation. Other than that, Mike, thank you so much. As always, I learned something new from you, so thank you for it. Appreciate it.
Glad to have you all, and certainly reach out to me at mnewcomb@juniper.net. I'm planning on being at EduCause unless they cancel it, but please come to our booth. We got a lot of stuff that we can show you there. I'll be there to be there personally to meet you if you'd like.
Fantastic. Take care.
Have a good day. Take care.